Block 1. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations and the gentle clink of silverware against porcelain. Soft amber lights hung from the ceiling, casting everyone in a golden glow that made even the plainest faces look mysterious. I smoothed down the front of my black dress, the only one I owned that wasn't faded from too many washes, and checked my watch again. 20 minutes past our meeting time, and still no sign of Tyler, my blind date. The maitre d' had seated me at a corner table for two, partially hidden behind a tall arrangement of lilies and orchids. Their heavy perfume mingled with the rich aromas of garlic and wine sauce from the kitchen, making my empty stomach growl in protest. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, saving room for this dinner I couldn't really afford. Just a few more minutes, I whispered to the waiter as he passed by with a sympathetic glance. My third glass of water sat untouched, the ice long melted. The couples around me were deep in conversation, leaning toward each other over plates of steaming pasta and seafood. I felt painfully visible in my solitude, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. Mia had promised Tyler was reliable. "He's my boyfriend's cousin," she'd assured me. "Decent job, nice apartment, and actually looking for something serious." After the string of disasters I'd endured in the last year, decent and nice sounded like winning lottery numbers. But now, as I sat alone in a restaurant I couldn't afford, I wondered if this was just another cosmic joke at my expense. I was about to gather my dignity and leave, when the front door opened, and every molecule of air in the room seemed to shift. 3 men entered, and the restaurant's ambient noise dampened as if someone had turned down the volume. The first 2 were built like brick walls in expensive suits, their eyes scanning the room with practiced precision. But it was the man between them who drew every gaze, including mine. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate yet effortless. His charcoal suit looked custom-made, molding perfectly to broad shoulders and a lean waist. Dark hair, styled just enough to look intentional rather than fussy, framed a face of severe angles and shadows. He couldn't have been much older than 30, yet there was something ancient about his eyes, dark, knowing, and utterly unreadable. I didn't realize I was staring until those eyes locked with mine. For one excruciating moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, mercifully, he looked away, following the maitre d' to a private alcove on the opposite side of the restaurant. My phone buzzed, breaking the spell. A text from Mia. "Tyler got called into emergency surgery. He's so sorry. Rain check? Of course. Tyler the surgeon. Too important for our date." I sighed, gathering my purse and jacket. The waiter approached with a sad smile, ready to clear away the unused place setting. "I'm afraid my date isn't coming," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Just the check for the water, please. The water is complimentary, miss," he replied with surprising gentleness. "No charge." Small mercies. I nodded gratefully and stood to leave, accidentally knocking my fork to the floor. As I bent to retrieve it, a different voice, low, smooth, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place, spoke from behind me. "Leaving so soon?" I straightened too quickly, nearly colliding with a solid chest. The man from the entrance stood there, close enough that I caught the scent of his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, with notes of cedar and amber. His eyes, which I now saw were a deep brown so dark they appeared black in certain light, studied me with unsettling intensity. "My date canceled," I explained, wondering why I felt compelled to tell him anything. A slight smile curved his lips, his considerable loss. Something fluttered in my stomach, a warning, perhaps, or something more dangerous. I stepped back, needing distance from his overwhelming presence. "Thank you, but I should go." "Without dinner?" He raised an eyebrow. "You've been waiting for nearly half an hour. You must be hungry." The observation startled me. He'd noticed me, had been watching me wait alone. I didn't know whether to be flattered or frightened. "I'm Adrian," he said, not offering his hand, just his name, like it should mean something to me. "Ellie," I replied automatically, immediately regretting giving my real name. "Ellie," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "Join me for dinner." It wasn't a question, not exactly a command either, but something in between, an expectation that left little room for refusal. "I couldn't possibly," I began. "I insist." His smile remained, but his eyes didn't waver. My table is already set for 2, and I dislike wasting reservations almost as much as I dislike dining alone. One of his companions had materialized silently at his side, watching our exchange with the emotional investment of a statue. The second man stood by the front door, his gaze sweeping the restaurant in continuous measured arcs. "You have company," I pointed out, nodding toward the stoic figure beside him. Adrian's smile widened fractionally. "Security, not company." He said it so matter-of-factly that I almost laughed, thinking it was a joke. His expression told me it wasn't. I should have declined. Should have walked right past him and out into the cool night air. Should have called an Uber and gone home to my cramped apartment, microwaved leftovers, and the stack of medical bills I'd been avoiding all week. Every instinct told me this man was dangerous in ways I couldn't even comprehend. Instead, I heard myself say, "Just dinner?" Something flashed in his eyes. Triumph, perhaps. "Just dinner," he agreed. That was my first mistake. Agreeing to dinner with a stranger who needed security guards and private alcoves. But it wasn't the moment that sealed my fate. No, that came later, when I accidentally picked up his phone instead of mine. Adrian's private table was indeed set for 2, though I doubted he'd been expecting company when he arrived. The alcove was separated from the main dining area by heavy velvet curtains, offering an illusion of privacy while still allowing glimpses of the restaurant beyond. "You do this often?" I asked as he held out my chair. "Rescue stranded women from bad dates?" He took the seat across from me, his movements economical and precise. "No," he said simply. "This is a first." A waiter appeared immediately, pouring water and presenting us with menus bound in soft leather. Adrian didn't even glance at his. "We'll start with the burrata, then the osso buco for me." He looked at me expectantly. "I'll have the mushroom risotto," I said, picking the least expensive main course I could find. Even then, the price made me wince internally, and a bottle of the 2012 Barolo, Adrian added. The waiter nodded and disappeared through the curtains. "Do you always order for your dinner companions?" I found myself asking, surprising myself with my boldness. "Only the appetizer," he replied, unruffled. "I thought we might share, and if I didn't like burrata?" A faint smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Then I'd order something else." The simplicity of his answer disarmed me. I'd expected arrogance or defensiveness, not this calm accommodation. It made me wonder what else I might be wrong about. "Why did you invite me to dinner?" I asked directly. Adrian studied me for a moment, his gaze methodical, as if cataloging every feature of my face. "You intrigued me. Because I was stood up? Because you waited 27 minutes before deciding to leave," he corrected. "Patience is uncommon these days." The specificity of the time unsettled me. He really had been watching me. "Or desperation," I countered. His expression darkened slightly. "Is that what it was?" I looked down at the pristine tablecloth. "Maybe a bit of both." The appetizer arrived, saving me from elaborating. The burrata was presented on a bed of heirloom tomatoes, drizzled with aged balsamic and fragrant olive oil. Adrian gestured for me to serve myself first. As I took a bite, the creamy cheese melting on my tongue, I noticed him watching me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but instead sent a peculiar thrill down my spine. "Tell me about yourself, Ellie," he said, finally breaking the silence. I swallowed carefully. "Not much to tell. I work at Memorial Hospital as a pediatric nurse. I have a tiny apartment with an even tinier balcony, and apparently, I have terrible taste in blind dates." "A nurse," he repeated, something unreadable flickering across his expression. "You care for children?" I nodded. "For 6 years now. Noble work." "It doesn't feel noble at 3 a.m. when you're changing IV bags," I said with a small smile. "But I love it. The kids make it worthwhile." "You have none of your own?" The question was personal, but his tone made it seem like a natural progression of our conversation. "No," I answered. "Someday, maybe." Adrian nodded, accepting this without comment. "And your family?" "Just my mother in Arizona. My father died when I was 12, and I didn't know why I was telling him these things. Details I usually guarded more carefully." "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. And though the words were formulaic, his tone suggested genuine sympathy. "What about you?" I asked, eager to shift attention away from myself. What does Adrian do when he's not rescuing abandoned women in restaurants? He took a sip of water, his fingers long and elegant around the glass. I manage investments. It was vague enough to be meaningless. Investments in what? Various enterprises, he replied smoothly. Real estate primarily, some hospitality ventures, hence the restaurant knowledge, I surmised. He inclined his head slightly, among other things. The wine arrived, and the sommelier made a show of presenting the bottle to Adrian, who examined the label with a critical eye before nodding his approval. After pouring a small amount for tasting, Adrian swirled it, inhaled, and took a deliberate sip. His nod was almost imperceptible, but it sent the sommelier into motion, filling our glasses. I waited until the man had retreated before raising my glass. To rescued dinners, I said. Adrian's lips curved into a genuine smile for the first time. It transformed his face from handsome to breathtaking, to fortunate timing. We clinked glasses, and I took a sip. The wine was exquisite, rich with flavors I couldn't begin to identify. It probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Our main courses arrived, and conversation flowed more easily as we ate. Adrian asked questions about my work, listening with surprising interest as I described the challenges and rewards of pediatric nursing. He offered little about himself in return, deflecting personal queries with practiced ease. What emerged instead was a portrait of a man who noticed everything, from the slight limp of our waiter to the argument brewing at a table across the restaurant. It should have made me uncomfortable, this hyper-awareness. Instead, I found myself relaxing in his presence, protected by his attention rather than exposed by it. By dessert, a tiramisu we shared at his insistence, I'd had enough wine to ask what I'd been wondering all evening. Why the security detail? Are you famous or something? Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, becoming more contained. My business dealings occasionally make enemies. What kind of real estate investor needs bodyguards? I pressed. The successful kind, he replied, his tone light but his eyes serious. Not everyone appreciates competition. It was another non-answer, but the subtle warning in his voice suggested I shouldn't push further. I changed the subject, asking about the watch on his wrist, a timepiece I recognized as astronomically expensive, only because one of the cardiac surgeons at the hospital wore a similar model. As Adrian described its craftsmanship, our phones, both black, both face down on the table beside our plates, vibrated almost simultaneously. Without thinking, I reached for the one closer to me, turning it over to check the notification. The message on the screen made my blood run cold. Perlovich shipment secured, 3 casualties. Warehouse cleared. I stared at the text, uncomprehending, until Adrian's hand closed over mine, gentle but firm, and took the phone from my grasp. I believe that's mine, he said quietly, his eyes never leaving my face as he handed me the other phone. My mouth had gone dry. I'm sorry, I didn't... An unfortunate mix-up, he interrupted smoothly, pocketing his phone without looking at it. No harm done. But there was harm done. I'd seen something I shouldn't have, and the knowledge hung between us like a blade. I should go, I said, pushing back from the table. Adrian's expression remained neutral, but his eyes had turned cold. Of course. It's getting late. He signaled for the check, which appeared instantly. I reached for my purse, but his slight headshake stopped me. My invitation, my treat. I didn't argue. I wanted this evening over, wanted to be back in my apartment with the door locked and the night's event safely categorized as a strange encounter never to be repeated. Adrian stood when I did, buttoning his suit jacket in one fluid motion. Allow me to see you home. It wasn't an offer. The hairs on the back of my neck rose. That's not necessary, I said quickly. I can call an Uber. I insist, he repeated, the same phrase he'd used to invite me to dinner. It carried the same weight of inevitability. One of his men materialized at the entrance to our alcove, and Adrian spoke to him in a language I didn't recognize. Something Slavic, perhaps. The man nodded and disappeared again. My driver will bring the car around, Adrian explained, placing his hand at the small of my back to guide me through the restaurant. His touch was light, but unmistakably proprietary, as if he'd claimed me in some way I didn't fully understand. I felt eyes on us as we walked toward the exit. Curious, envious, wary. I wondered how many of them knew who he was, what he did. I wondered if I was the only one in the dark. Outside, a black Bentley idled at the curb. One of Adrian's men held the rear door open. This close to freedom, I made one last attempt. Really, I can get myself home. Adrian's hand remained at my back, a gentle pressure guiding me forward. It's no trouble. I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing I'd left you to find your own way. The concern might have sounded genuine if not for the steel underneath it. As we reached the car, he leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. Besides, Ellie, we need to discuss what you saw on my phone. Don't you think? And in that moment, I realized my second mistake wasn't picking up his phone. It was thinking I had any choice in what happened next. The inside of the Bentley smelled of rich leather and Adrian's subtle cologne. The privacy partition was already raised, sealing us away from the driver and the second security guard who sat in the passenger seat. Streetlights streamed across Adrian's face in rhythmic intervals, illuminating then shadowing his features like a noir film. I pressed myself against the door, putting as much distance between us as the spacious back seat would allow. My heart hammered against my ribs, loud enough that I was certain he could hear it. "Your address?" Adrian asked, his voice deceptively casual. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was for this man to know where I lived, but I saw no way out of the situation. The child locks were probably engaged, and even if I managed to open the door, we were already moving through downtown traffic. "Westwood Gardens, on Elmhurst Avenue," I finally answered, giving the name of my apartment complex rather than my specific unit number. Adrian nodded, pressing a button near his armrest. The partition lowered slightly. "Westwood Gardens," he instructed, then raised the partition again without waiting for acknowledgement. Silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. I stared out the window, watching familiar landmarks slide by. We were taking the most direct route to my home, which offered a small measure of relief. "You're afraid," Adrian observed after a moment. I turned to face him. "Shouldn't I be?" He studied me, his expression thoughtful. "You saw a business message that meant nothing to you. 3 casualties doesn't sound like nothing." His eyes narrowed fractionally. "You're very direct." "Only when I'm terrified," I admitted. Something that might have been regret flickered across his face. "I have no intention of harming you, Ellie." "Then what are your intentions?" Adrian leaned back against the seat, seemingly relaxed despite the tension crackling in the air. "Initially, to enjoy dinner with an intriguing woman. Now to ensure a misunderstanding doesn't escalate into something unfortunate." "Is that what this is? A misunderstanding? That depends entirely on you." His voice was soft, but carried an unmistakable warning. I swallowed hard. "I didn't see anything." A smile ghosted across his lips. "Now you're lying." "I saw a text about a shipment," I conceded. "That's all." "And the other part?" I met his gaze directly. "People get hurt in accidents all the time." Adrian's smile widened, showing the barest hint of teeth. "Indeed they do." The car slowed as we approached my apartment complex, a mid-range building that had seen better days but was still respectable enough. Security lights illuminated the small courtyard entrance, and a few windows glowed with the blue light of televisions. "How long have you lived here?" Adrian asked, looking past me at the building. 2 years, I answered automatically, then silently cursed myself for providing even that small detail. The Bentley pulled up to the curb and stopped. I reached for the door handle, eager to escape, but Adrian's hand closed gently around my wrist. His touch sent an electric current through my arm, a confusing mixture of fear and something far more dangerous. "Wait," he said. I froze, my breathing shallow. Adrian released my wrist and reached inside his jacket. For one terrifying moment, I thought he was drawing a weapon. Instead, he produced a business card. Thick, cream-colored stock with only a phone number embossed in dark ink. "My private line," he explained, offering it to me. "If you need anything at all, call this number." I stared at the card. Why would I need anything from you? "Life is unpredictable," he said simply. When I didn't take the card, he reached for my hand, turned it palm up, and placed the card in it, folding my fingers over the thick paper. His hand lingered on mine a moment longer than necessary. "I enjoyed our dinner, Ellie," he said, and the sincerity in his voice was almost more frightening than the threat had been. "Perhaps we can do it again sometime." "I don't think that would be wise," I managed to say. Adrian's expression was unreadable. Wisdom is rarely compatible with desire. Before I could process that statement, the door beside me opened. The security guard stood waiting, his face impassive. I stumbled out of the car, clutching my purse and the unwanted business card. "Good night, Ellie," Adrian called. "Sleep well." The door closed, and the Bentley pulled away smoothly, leaving me trembling on the sidewalk. I watched until its taillights disappeared around the corner, then hurried inside, checking over my shoulder every few steps. Once inside my apartment, I locked the door, then added the chain and dragged a chair under the doorknob for good measure. I moved through each room, checking closets and behind the shower curtain, half expecting to find one of Adrian's men waiting for me. Finding nothing, I collapsed onto my couch, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. The business card was still clutched in my hand, the edges damp with sweat. I stared at the number, memorizing it despite myself, then tore the card into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. That night, I dreamed of dark eyes watching me from shadows. Morning arrived with harsh sunlight and the harsh reality that I had to go to work, despite the surreal events of the previous evening. I moved through my routine mechanically. Shower, coffee, scrubs, trying to convince myself that the dinner with Adrian had been less sinister than it seemed. Perhaps he really was just a businessman with overzealous security concerns. Perhaps the text had been about a shipment of goods, where there had been a theft or accident. Perhaps I was lying to myself because the alternative was too frightening to contemplate. The hospital welcomed me with its familiar antiseptic smell and fluorescent lighting. I lost myself in the rhythm of the pediatric ward, checking vitals, administering medications, coaxing smiles from sick children. By midday, Adrian had receded to the back of my mind. A strange encounter that was already beginning to feel dreamlike. "Earth to Ellie," a voice called, snapping me back to the present. Mia stood in the doorway of the medication room, her scrubs rumpled from a busy morning. "I've been calling your name for 30 seconds. "Sorry," I said, organizing the pills in my medication tray. "Rough night." She winced sympathetically. "Tyler feels terrible about canceling. He got pulled into an emergency gallbladder removal. I'd almost forgotten about the original blind date. It's fine. Did you at least enjoy the restaurant? That place is impossible to get into." I hesitated, unsure how much to share. It was interesting. I actually ended up having dinner with someone else. Mia's eyes widened. "You picked up a guy at Terrazza? Details now." "I didn't pick him up," I protested. "He sort of rescued me from dining alone." "Handsome?" I thought of Adrian's severe features, the intensity of his gaze. "Yes." "Rich?" The Bentley, the watch, the casual way he'd ordered wine that probably cost more than my rent. "Definitely." "And?" She leaned forward eagerly. "And nothing. He gave me a ride home, I said, and that was it." Mia looked disappointed. "Not even a goodnight kiss? Not even close." I pushed past her with my medication tray. "Don't you have patients to attend to?" She sighed dramatically. "Fine, keep your mystery man a secret. But Tyler wants to reschedule for Friday. You in? After Adrian, the thought of a normal date with a normal doctor seemed like a lifeline back to reality. "Sure, why not?" "Great," Mia beamed. "He'll pick you up at 7. The rest of my shift passed uneventfully. I clocked out at 6 p.m., weary but satisfied with the day's work. The evening was cool, and I decided to walk the 6 blocks to my apartment rather than wait for the bus. Exercise and fresh air would help clear my head. I was halfway home when I noticed the black car. It wasn't the Bentley from the night before, but a Mercedes SUV with tinted windows moving slowly along the curb beside me. The hairs on my neck rose as it maintained my exact pace, neither passing nor falling behind. I quickened my steps, and the car accelerated slightly to match. My heart began to race. I fumbled for my phone, ready to dial 911, when the rear window lowered. "Ellie." Adrian's voice. My name in his mouth sounded like a claim. I stopped walking, my finger hovering over the emergency call button. The car stopped too, and the rear door opened. "Get in, please," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Why are you following me?" I demanded, not moving toward the car. Adrian sighed. "I'm not following you. I was on my way to see you. Why?" "Because I've been thinking about you all day," he said simply, against my better judgment. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. "I have plans tonight." "No, you don't." He gestured to the empty sidewalk around us. "Get in the car, Ellie. It's going to rain." I glanced at the sky, which was indeed darkening with approaching storm clouds. "How did you know my work schedule?" A flicker of impatience crossed his face. "Does it matter? I'm here now." It mattered very much, but I didn't say so. Instead, I took a step back. "I'm not getting in your car." Adrian studied me for a long moment, then nodded as if coming to a decision. "Very well." He stepped out of the car, adjusting his suit, navy today, with a subtle check pattern. "We'll walk." I blinked in surprise. "What?" "You don't want to get in the car. I understand. We'll walk to your apartment." He turned to the driver, a different man from the previous night, but with the same vigilant eyes, and spoke a few words in that foreign language. The man nodded and pulled away from the curb, driving ahead of us. Adrian gestured for me to continue walking. "Shall we?" Confused and wary, I resumed my path home, now with Adrian beside me. He matched his stride to mine effortlessly, hands in his pockets, seemingly unbothered by the prospect of walking 6 blocks in what had to be $1,000 shoes. "You tore up my card," he said after a moment. I glanced at him sharply. "How?" "You have careful habits," he interrupted. "You'd never leave evidence of our connection lying around. You destroy it thoroughly." The casual accuracy of his assessment chilled me. "What do you want from me, Adrian?" He considered the question as we waited at a crosswalk. "Initially, I wanted to ensure your silence about what you saw. Now," he looked down at me, something unreadable in his expression. "Now I find myself curious about the woman who waited 27 minutes for a man who never showed, then tried to leave without eating. There's nothing curious about being stood up," I said. "It's curious that you blame yourself for it." I frowned. "I never said that. You didn't have to." The crosswalk signal changed, and we continued walking. "Your first instinct was to pay for water you didn't order. You apologized to the waiter for taking up the table. You assumed your date had better things to do than meet you." Each observation landed like a small slap. "You noticed all that from across a restaurant?" "I notice everything, Ellie." The simple statement carried a weight of truth that made me shiver despite the warm evening. We walked in silence for a block, the air growing heavier with the approaching storm. The Mercedes was nowhere in sight, though I was certain it wasn't far. "You're a pediatric nurse," Adrian said suddenly. "Why?" The question caught me off guard. "Because I like helping children. There are many ways to help children that don't involve night shifts, bodily fluids, and emotional exhaustion." I glanced at him, surprised by his perceptiveness. "I had cancer as a child," I said, the words coming before I could stop them. "The nurses were the ones who made it bearable. They're the reason I survived, in more ways than one." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. A softening around the eyes, perhaps. "And now you do the same for others." "I try." Thunder rumbled in the distance as we turned onto my street. The Mercedes was parked in front of my building, the driver standing beside it, alert and watchful. Adrian stopped a few yards from the entrance. "Have dinner with me again tomorrow night." I stared at him, bewildered by the invitation. "Why?" "Because I want to see you again," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" I gestured vaguely. "Because of whatever it is you do. Because you have men watching me. Because you're clearly dangerous." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "All valid concerns. Then you understand why I'm saying no." "I understand why you should say no," he corrected, "but I don't think you will." Rain began to fall, fat drops splattering on the sidewalk between us. Neither of us moved. "I have a date tomorrow night," I said. It was a lie, but he didn't need to know that. Adrian's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. With whom? The surgeon who canceled yesterday. Another lie, since Tyler's rescheduled date wasn't until Friday. Cancel it. The command was soft, but absolute. I lifted my chin defiantly. No. He took a step closer, and despite myself, I held my ground. Rain began to soak through my scrubs, plastering my hair to my forehead. Adrian remained perfectly dry beneath a black umbrella that had materialized from nowhere, held by the driver who now stood silently behind him. "You don't know me, Ellie," Adrian said, his voice barely audible above the rainfall. "But I promise you, I'm a better option than a man who would leave you waiting alone in a restaurant. Because you'd never stand me up, because I'd never let you go in the first place." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a traitorous warmth spreading through my chest. I took a step back, needing distance. "Good night, Adrian." I turned and hurried toward my building, feeling his eyes on me with every step. Only when I was inside, the front door locked behind me, did I dare to look back. Adrian stood in the rain, the umbrella now in his own hand, watching me. Our eyes met through the glass door, and he inclined his head slightly. Acknowledgement, not surrender. Then he turned and walked to the waiting car, his movements unhurried despite the downpour. As the Mercedes pulled away, I leaned against the wall, my heart racing. I'd rejected him, yet I felt certain this wasn't the end. Whatever game we were playing, Adrian wasn't the type of man who lost. Upstairs, my apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. I peeled off my wet scrubs and stood under a hot shower, trying to wash away the lingering sensation of Adrian's presence. When I emerged, wrapped in my threadbare robe, I checked my phone out of habit. A text from an unknown number glowed on the screen. "Sweet dreams, Ellie." I nearly dropped the phone. How had he gotten my number? I hadn't given it to him. But then, I hadn't given him my work schedule or the specific location of my apartment building either. Adrian, it seemed, had ways of getting whatever information he wanted. I should have been outraged, should have blocked the number immediately. Instead, I found myself staring at those two simple words until the screen went dark. That night, sleep eluded me. Every creak of the building, every distant car horn had me sitting up in bed, convinced Adrian had changed his mind about letting me refuse him. When I did finally drift off near dawn, my dreams were filled with rain and dark eyes, and the unsettling sense of being both pursued and protected. I woke to sunlight streaming through my curtains and the realization that I'd made a terrible mistake. In trying to push Adrian away, I'd only made myself more interesting to him. Men like him, powerful, dangerous men, didn't accept rejection. They saw it as a challenge, and something told me Adrian never lost a challenge. My shift at the hospital dragged endlessly. Every time the doors to the pediatric ward opened, I tensed, half expecting Adrian to walk through them. He didn't, but his absence felt deliberate, as if he were allowing me space to reconsider his dinner invitation. "You look like you're expecting a ghost," Mia commented as we restocked supplies in the treatment room. I forced a smile. "Just tired." "Tyler texted me 3 times asking about you," she said, wiggling her eyebrows suggestively. "I think he's smitten already." Tyler. The normal doctor with the normal life who'd stood me up. He seemed like a character from a different story now, one far less complicated than the narrative I'd stumbled into. "That's nice," I said non-committally. Mia frowned. "Okay, what gives? Yesterday you could barely function after your mystery dinner date, and today you're completely disinterested in a gorgeous surgeon who's practically begging for a chance with you." I carefully arranged gauze pads in their container. "It's nothing." "Bull." She planted herself in front of me, arms crossed. "Spill it, Ellie." "Did something happen with restaurant guy?" The concern in her eyes was genuine, and I suddenly longed to confide in someone, to have another person validate the strangeness of my situation with Adrian. "He found me after work yesterday," I admitted, "followed me home." Mia's eyes widened. "What? That's stalking." "It wasn't exactly like that," I hedged, though it absolutely was. "He wanted to have dinner again. And? What did you say?" I said no. She exhaled in relief. "Good." "Did he back off?" I thought of the text message, the certainty in Adrian's voice when he told me I wouldn't refuse him. Not exactly. Mia's expression darkened. Do you need to file a report? My brother-in-law's a cop. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. The mere thought of police involvement made my stomach clench with fear, though whether for myself or for Adrian I couldn't say. No police. It's fine. I can handle it. Are you sure? Because this sounds serious, Elle. I nodded, regretting having said anything. I'm sure. He's just persistent. What's his name? Let me look him up. Adrian, I said before I could stop myself. I don't know his last name. Mia pulled out her phone. Adrian what? What does he do? Investments, I replied vaguely. Real estate. She frowned at her screen. That doesn't narrow it down much. It doesn't matter, I said firmly, taking the phone from her hands. I'm not seeing him again. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Even as I spoke, I knew it was only a matter of time before I found myself across from Adrian again. The gravity of his presence was too strong to resist indefinitely. Mia studied my face, her expression troubled. Be careful, Ellie. Men who don't take no for an answer are dangerous. If only she knew how right she was. The rest of the day passed in a blur of medications, vital signs, and reassuring small patients. By the time I clocked out, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the hospital parking lot. I hesitated at the entrance, scanning the street for any sign of Adrian's car, feeling both relief and an unexpected pang of disappointment when I saw nothing unusual. I took the bus home, hyper-aware of my surroundings, studying each passenger's face for the watchful eyes of Adrian's men. The ride was uneventful, as was the short walk from the bus stop to my apartment. No sleek cars trailed me, no powerful figures materialized from the shadows. It was almost anticlimactic. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and headed straight for the shower, letting hot water wash away the hospital smell and the lingering tension in my shoulders. Afterward, I changed into comfortable leggings and an oversized sweater, ready for a quiet evening alone. I was heating leftover pasta when someone knocked on my door. My heart leaped into my throat. No one ever visited me unannounced. I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. A delivery man stood in the hallway, holding a large white box tied with a black satin ribbon. Relief mingled with suspicion as I cracked open the door, keeping the chain engaged. Yes? Delivery for Eleanor Winters, the man said, consulting his clipboard. I frowned. Almost no one used my full name. That's me. Sign here, please. He passed the clipboard through the narrow opening. I signed, then reluctantly unchained the door to accept the box. It was lighter than it looked and cool to the touch. Who is it from? Not specified, the delivery man replied. Have a good evening. He turned and walked away before I could ask anything else. I closed and locked the door, then stood staring at the mysterious package in my hands. I knew who it was from. The question was whether I should open it. Curiosity won. I carried the box to my kitchen counter and carefully untied the ribbon. Inside, nestled in layers of tissue paper, was a single white orchid plant, its delicate blooms pristine against dark foliage. A small card lay beside it, bearing only 3 words in elegant handwriting. Reconsider, A. I touched one perfect petal, a smile tugging at my lips despite myself. It was both understated and extravagant, like the man himself. No gaudy bouquet or obvious luxury, just a single perfect specimen that probably cost more than I made in a day. My phone vibrated with an incoming text. The same unknown number from the night before. Did you receive my gift? I stared at the message, debating whether to respond. Ignoring him hadn't worked so far. Perhaps engagement on my own terms was the better strategy. Yes, I typed back. It's beautiful. Thank you. His response came immediately. Like its recipient. Heat rushed to my cheeks. It was a simple compliment, yet it affected me more than it should have. I placed the phone face down on the counter, trying to collect my thoughts. The microwave beeped, reminding me of my forgotten dinner. I removed the pasta, no longer appetizing compared to the memory of the meal I'd shared with Adrian. As I picked at the food, my phone vibrated again. Have you reconsidered? I took a deep breath and typed, I'm still not having dinner with you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared, finally. Then I'll come to you. My pulse quickened. That's not necessary. I disagree. A pause, then another text. I'm already on my way. Panic fluttered in my chest. Adrian, no. I'm not dressed for company. I don't care what you're wearing. The bluntness of his response made me blush again. This is exactly the problem. You don't listen when I say no. This time the pause was longer. You're right. I apologize. Another message followed quickly. May I please come see you tonight, Ellie? The polite request, so at odds with his usual commanding tone, caught me off guard. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The sensible answer was still no. The safe answer was no. Yes, I typed instead. But just for a little while. Thank you. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I stared at the screen in disbelief. What had I just done? Panic propelled me into action. I rushed to my bedroom, changing from comfortable clothes into jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out the color of my eyes. I ran a brush through my hair, applied minimal makeup, and spritzed on a touch of perfume. All the while, a voice in my head screamed that this was madness, inviting a dangerous man into my home, caring how I looked for him. 19 minutes after his text, a knock sounded at my door. I took a steadying breath, checked my appearance one last time in the hall mirror, and opened the door. Adrian stood alone in the hallway. No security detail visible. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that softened his usual severe appearance. In one hand, he held a bottle of wine. In the other, a small paper bag from which emanated the tantalizing aroma of fresh bread. I thought you might be hungry, he said, his eyes taking in my appearance with obvious appreciation. I already ate, I lied. A knowing smile curved his lips. No, you didn't. I stepped back to let him in, unsettled by his certainty. How would you know that? The same way I know you've been checking the door all evening, expecting me despite your refusal. He moved past me into the apartment, his presence immediately making the space feel smaller. You're drawn to me, Ellie, as I am to you. Fighting it only makes it more compelling. I closed the door, leaning against it. That's a convenient theory. Adrian surveyed my apartment with interest. The modest furniture, the bookshelves crammed with medical texts and paperback novels, the small balcony overlooking the street below. His gaze lingered on the orchid, now displayed on my coffee table. You like the flower, he observed. It's lovely, I admitted. He nodded, seemingly pleased. Do you have wine glasses? The domestic normality of the question was almost comical given the circumstances. In the cabinet above the sink, Adrian moved to my kitchen with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to navigating unfamiliar spaces. He found the glasses, opened the wine with a corkscrew he produced from his pocket, and poured 2 generous servings. Your apartment suits you, he said, handing me a glass. Unpretentious, yet thoughtfully arranged. I took the wine, careful not to let our fingers touch. Thank you, I think. It was a compliment. He gestured to the couch. May I? I nodded, and he sat, placing the paper bag on the coffee table between us. I remained standing, maintaining distance. You can relax, Ellie, he said softly. I didn't come here to harm you. Why did you come? Adrian took a sip of his wine, considering. Because you fascinate me. You barely know me. I know enough. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I know you dedicate your life to helping children. I know you survived cancer and carry that experience with you. I know you live alone, but keep fresh flowers on your windowsill because they remind you of your mother's garden in Arizona. I stared at him, a chill running down my spine. How could you possibly know that? I make it my business to know things, Ellie, especially about people who interest me. The casual invasion of my privacy should have infuriated me. Instead, I felt a confused mixture of fear and flattery. That's not normal behavior, Adrian. I've never claimed to be normal. He reached for the paper bag. Are you going to sit? I hesitated, then perched on the armchair adjacent to the couch, keeping the coffee table between us. Adrian opened the bag, revealing warm pastries filled with spiced meat and vegetables. Georgian khachapuri, he explained, offering me one. An old family recipe. The food smelled incredible, and my neglected dinner had left me hungry. I accepted it cautiously. Your family is Georgian? A shadow crossed his face. My mother was. She died when I was young. The unexpected vulnerability in his voice caught me off guard. I'm sorry. He shrugged slightly. It was a long time ago. I took a bite of the pastry, the flavors exploding on my tongue. Buttery dough, savory meat, herbs I couldn't identify. This is amazing. Adrian smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features. I'm glad you like it. For a moment, we ate in companionable silence. The wine loosened the knot of tension in my shoulders, and I found myself relaxing despite my better judgment. Tell me something, Adrian said suddenly, when you saw the message on my phone. What did you think? The abrupt shift back to dangerous territory made me tense again. I tried not to think about it at all. But you did. I set down my wine glass. I thought you might be involved in something illegal. And that frightened you? Of course it did. Adrian studied me intently, yet you let me into your home tonight. I met his gaze. Maybe I'm making a mistake, or maybe you understand something fundamental about me. He leaned closer. I would never harm you, Ellie, never. The conviction in his voice was absolute. But you harm others. When necessary. He didn't deny it, didn't try to soften the truth. My world isn't kind or gentle. But within it, I protect what's mine. A shiver ran through me at the implication. I'm not yours, aren't you? His eyes held mine, dark and knowing. From the moment you took my phone by mistake, our paths became intertwined. You know things about me that could be dangerous, for both of us. That creates a bond whether you want it or not. A bond based on fear. For now, Adrian set his empty glass on the table. But that can change. The intensity of his gaze made my heart race. He was dangerous, possibly criminal, certainly controlling. Everything I should be running from, yet something about him called to a part of me I hadn't known existed. A part that recognized his darkness and wasn't afraid. What do you want from me, Adrian? I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. He stood and moved around the coffee table to kneel before my chair, bringing his face level with mine. This close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, smell the subtle cologne that had haunted my dreams. I want to know you, he said, his voice low and intimate. I want to protect you. I want to be the one you turn to when you need anything. Anything at all. That sounds like possession, not a relationship. A smile ghosted across his lips. Perhaps the distinction isn't as clear as you think. Before I could respond, he reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers trailed along my jawline, a touch so gentle it made my breath catch. I can give you things no one else can, Ellie, he murmured. Safety, security, a life without worry. At what cost? Your trust. His hand cupped my cheek. Your loyalty. My freedom, I added. Adrian's eyes darkened. I would never cage you, but you'd expect me to stay. Yes. The simple admission hung between us. I would. I should have been repelled by his honesty, by the possessiveness that radiated from him like heat. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, drawn by the promise of protection in a world that had often left me to fend for myself. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and I shivered. I can't be what you want, Adrian. You already are. His gaze dropped to my mouth. May I kiss you, Ellie? The question, so at odds with his usual commands, undid me. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. Adrian leaned forward, closing the distance between us with deliberate slowness. When his lips finally met mine, the contact was feather-light, questioning. I answered by pressing closer, my hands finding their way to his shoulders. The kiss deepened, his mouth firm yet gentle against mine. One of his hands slid to the nape of my neck, the other to my waist, drawing me toward him until I was perched on the edge of the chair. Heat bloomed in my core, spreading outward with each caress. When we finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, I saw something new in Adrian's expression. Hunger, yes, but also wonder, as if I'd surprised him somehow. You should go, I whispered, even as my body ached for him to stay. Adrian studied my face, then nodded slowly. For tonight. He rose to his feet, straightening his sweater. But this conversation isn't over, Ellie. I stood as well, suddenly aware of how small my apartment was, how easy it would be to fall back into his arms. I have a date tomorrow night, I reminded him, clinging to the last shred of my resistance. Something dark flashed in Adrian's eyes. Cancel it. I can't just... You can. His voice hardened. And you will. The commanding tone snapped me back to reality. This is exactly what I mean, Adrian. You don't get to control my life. He stepped closer, looming over me. I'm trying to protect you. From what? A perfectly nice doctor? From anyone who might take you away from me? The raw possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a traitorous thrill through my body. I took a steadying breath. I barely know you. We've had one dinner and one kiss. That doesn't give you the right to dictate who I see. Adrian's jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might argue further. Then, surprisingly, he stepped back. You're right, he said, though the words seemed to cost him. You're free to make your own choices, Ellie. But understand this. I don't share what's mine. If you choose to pursue this doctor, whatever exists between us ends tonight. That's an ultimatum. It's the truth. He moved to the door, his posture rigid with controlled emotion. Call me when you've made your decision. And if I choose him? Adrian's hand paused on the doorknob. Then I wish you happiness. He turned to face me, his expression grave. But know this, I would have given you everything, would he? Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of his cologne and the impression of his lips on mine. I sank back into my chair, emotions warring within me. The rational part of my brain screamed that I'd had a lucky escape, that Adrian was dangerous, controlling, possibly criminal. I should block his number, cancel Friday's date with Tyler, and forget both men existed. But as I touched my fingers to my lips, still warm from Adrian's kiss, I knew I was already too entangled to simply walk away. The orchid on my coffee table seemed to watch me accusingly, its white petals pristine in the dim light. Like Adrian, it was both beautiful and demanding, requiring precise conditions to thrive, unforgiving of neglect. I poured myself another glass of the wine he'd brought, a rich red that tasted of dark cherries and oak. As I sipped, I tried to imagine a future with Adrian, a life of luxury and protection, but also of secrets and probable danger. Then I tried to picture the alternative, a normal relationship with someone like Tyler, safe and predictable. Both paths stretched before me, diverging into vastly different futures. The choice seemed impossible, yet it was mine to make, or so I thought. I couldn't have known that fate and Adrian had already decided for me. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying Adrian's kiss, his ultimatum, the intensity in his eyes when he'd said, I don't share what's mine. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, felt the ghost of his touch on my skin. By morning, I was exhausted and no closer to a decision. I dragged myself through my hospital shift in a haze, checking my phone compulsively for messages from Adrian. None came. His silence felt deliberate, a space created for me to miss him, to wonder where he was and what he was doing. It worked. You look terrible, Mia observed bluntly as we ate lunch in the hospital cafeteria. Did Mystery Man show up again? I pushed salad around my plate, something like that. She leaned forward. Spill. Now. I hesitated, then gave her a heavily edited version. A persistent admirer who'd brought wine and food to my apartment, a kiss that had left me breathless, and an ultimatum about my date with Tyler. Mia's eyes widened with each detail. Wait, so this Adrian guy is basically telling you it's him or Tyler? After one dinner and a makeout session? When she put it that way, it sounded insane. Yes. Tell him to go to hell, she said firmly. That's some serious control freak behavior. Red flag city. I know, I agreed, though part of me rebelled against her assessment. She hadn't felt the connection I had with Adrian, hadn't seen the vulnerability beneath his commanding exterior. So you're still on for tomorrow with Tyler, right? Mia pressed. I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Right. Good, he's excited. Keeps asking what your favorite flowers are. She smiled. I told him lilies. Lilies are fine, I said absently, thinking of the perfect white orchid Adrian had sent, how he'd somehow known it would appeal to me more than any traditional bouquet. The rest of the day dragged interminably. By the time I clocked out, my nerves were frayed from lack of sleep and constant anticipation. Every time the ward doors opened, I expected to see Adrian, and every time he wasn't there, disappointment warred with relief. Outside the hospital, the evening air was crisp with early autumn. I buttoned my coat and began the walk to the bus stop, constantly scanning my surroundings for any sign of Adrian or his men. The street remained stubbornly ordinary. No black cars idling at curbs, no watchful eyes tracking my movements. When the bus arrived, I sank into a seat near the back, suddenly bone-tired. My phone remained silent, the screen dark and accusatory. I could text him, of course. He'd left the decision in my hands. But what would I say? That I'd chosen a man I barely knew over one I'd never met, or that I was going through with tomorrow's date despite the magnetic pull I felt toward him. Neither option sat right with me. So I did nothing, watching the city slide by through smudged windows as the bus carried me home. My apartment building looked the same as always, yet I approached it warily, half expecting to find Adrian waiting. The lobby was empty save for Mrs. Patel from 3B, collecting her mail. I nodded hello and headed for the stairs, too restless for the confines of the elevator. On the 4th floor landing, I fumbled for my keys, juggling my purse and phone. The keys slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. As I bent to retrieve them, the stairwell door opened behind me. I spun around, heart leaping to my throat. But it was only Mr. Grayson from 4C, returning from his evening walk with his dachshund, Oscar. "Evening, Ellie," he greeted me cheerfully. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" "Beautiful," I echoed, embarrassed by my overreaction. I unlocked my apartment door, checked all the rooms out of habit, and finally allowed myself to relax. No Adrian, no security detail, no mysterious packages, just the quiet emptiness of my modest home. The orchid still sat on my coffee table, elegant and serene. I touched one perfect petal, remembering Adrian's words. "I would have given you everything." The past tense haunted me. Had I already lost him by not immediately choosing him? The thought brought an unexpected ache to my chest. I changed into comfortable clothes, heated leftovers, and settled on the couch with a medical journal I needed to review. The words blurred before my eyes, my mind constantly circling back to Adrian, his touch, his kiss, the possessive gleam in his eyes when he looked at me. My phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. An unknown number, not Adrian's. I answered warily. "Hello? Ellie? It's Tyler." The voice was pleasant, a warm baritone tinged with a slight southern accent. "Hope you don't mind me calling. Mia gave me your number." "Oh, hi, Tyler." I sat up straighter, guilt washing over me for reasons I couldn't quite articulate. "No, I don't mind." "Great." He sounded genuinely relieved. "Listen, I'm so sorry about having to cancel our dinner. Emergency surgeries are part of the job, but it was still a lousy way to make a first impression." "It's fine, really," I assured him. "I understand how it is. I was wondering if we could move our date up to tonight instead of tomorrow. I just found out I'm on call Friday, and I'd hate to risk having to cancel again." Tonight. The word hung in the air. If I agreed, I would be making my choice, choosing Tyler over Adrian without ever giving Adrian the chance to respond. I'm not sure," I stammered. "I've already had a long day and—" "Just a quick drink then," Tyler persisted. "There's a nice wine bar a few blocks from your place. We could meet in, say, an hour?" His eagerness was flattering, and under normal circumstances, I would have appreciated his effort. But all I could think about was Adrian's ultimatum, the invisible line I'd be crossing. "Tyler, A sharp knock at my door cut me off. 3 rapid taps, authoritative and unmistakable. My pulse quickened. "Can I call you back? Someone's at my door." "Sure, of course," Tyler replied, sounding disappointed. "I'll wait for your call." I ended the call and approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. My breath caught in my throat. Adrian stood in the hallway alone, his expression unreadable. He wore a black suit today, impeccably tailored, with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. He looked powerful, dangerous, and utterly compelling. I opened the door, suddenly conscious of my messy ponytail and worn lounge clothes. Adrian. His eyes swept over me, missing nothing. Ellie. He gestured to the phone still clutched in my hand. Am I interrupting? No, I said too quickly. Just a work call. A flicker of something, doubt, perhaps, crossed his face. But he didn't challenge me. May I come in? I stepped back to allow him entry, my nerves jangling. He moved past me into the apartment, his presence immediately filling the space. Unlike the previous evening, when he'd arrived with wine and food, tonight he carried nothing but himself. I closed the door, leaning against it. I didn't think I'd see you again so soon. I intended to give you time to consider your choice, he said, turning to face me. But circumstances have changed. A chill ran down my spine. What circumstances? Adrian's expression hardened. Someone has been asking questions about you, about our connection. Fear bloomed in my chest. What do you mean? Who's asking questions? My sources at the hospital reported a man making inquiries about you today. About your schedule, your friends. His jaw tightened. About whether you were seeing anyone. My mind raced. That's impossible. The only person who even knows about you is Mia, and she wouldn't... It wasn't your friend. Adrian stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. The description matches someone else entirely. Someone who has been watching you for days. The walls seemed to close in around me. I don't understand. Why would anyone be watching me? Adrian's expression darkened further. Because of me. Because someone has discovered my interest in you. And that puts me in danger? The question came out more steadily than I felt. Yes. The single word landed like a stone. I have enemies, Ellie. People who would use anything, anyone, I care about against me. The implication hung in the air between us. I was a vulnerability, a potential weapon to be used against him. And he had come to warn me. What do we do? I asked, unconsciously stepping closer to him, seeking the protection he represented. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Relief, perhaps, at my immediate acceptance of our situation as a shared problem. You need to come with me. Tonight. Come with you? Where? To my home. It's secure, protected. You'll be safe there until I resolve this situation. I shook my head, reality crashing back. Adrian, I can't just leave. I have work, responsibilities. Call in sick. He cut me off. This isn't optional, Ellie. Your safety is at risk. The commanding tone that had both attracted and repelled me returned full force. I bristled. You can't just order me to upend my life because you say so. I need proof, Adrian. Who is this person? What exactly is the threat? Adrian's eyes narrowed, frustration evident in the tight line of his mouth. Then, surprisingly, he reached into his jacket and withdrew his phone. He pulled up a photo and handed it to me. On the screen was a surveillance image of a man I'd never seen before. Tall, sandy-haired, unremarkable, except for the cold calculation in his eyes. He stood across the street from my apartment building, watching the entrance with unmistakable intensity. This was taken yesterday, Adrian said quietly, and this... He swiped to another image of the same man in the hospital parking lot. Was this morning. He's been tracking your routine, learning your patterns. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. Who is he? His name is Vance. He works for the Moretti family. Adrian's expression darkened. A rival organization. The clinical way he referenced what could only be another criminal enterprise should have terrified me. Instead, I found myself moving closer to Adrian, instinctively seeking his protection. Why me? I whispered. I'm nobody. Adrian cupped my face in his hands, his touch unexpectedly gentle. You're not nobody, Ellie. You're mine. The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver down my spine, or at least they believe you are, and that makes you valuable. I should have objected to being claimed so definitively, but fear overrode my independence. What would they do if they got to me? A muscle ticked in Adrian's jaw. Nothing, because I won't allow it to happen. His thumb stroked my cheek. Come with me, Ellie. Please. The plea, so at odds with his usual commands, undid me. I nodded slowly. Okay, just let me pack a few things. Relief washed over his features. Quickly, take only what you need for a few days. I moved to my bedroom in a daze, pulling a duffel bag from under the bed. As I mechanically packed clothes, toiletries, and medications, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Should I make a reservation for 9? The normalcy of it, a nice doctor asking about dinner plans, seemed absurd in contrast to the danger Adrian had revealed. I texted back, I'm sorry, something's come up. Can't make it tonight or tomorrow. I'll explain later. As I pressed send, I realized I was closing a door on that possible future, the safe, ordinary life I might have had. Instead, I was stepping willingly into Adrian's world of luxury and danger, of protection and possession. Adrian appeared in the doorway, watching me pack with barely concealed impatience. We need to leave now, he said. My car is waiting downstairs. I zipped the bag closed and nodded. I'm ready. He took the bag from my hand, his fingers brushing mine. I'll keep you safe, Ellie. I promise. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tighten. Whatever else Adrian was, criminal, controlling, dangerous, I believed absolutely in his determination to protect what he considered his. And somehow, impossibly, that now included me. We left through the service entrance, avoiding the main lobby. A different black car, an Audi SUV this time, idled in the alley, engine running. One of Adrian's men stood beside it, alert and watchful, a subtle bulge under his jacket suggesting a concealed weapon. Adrian ushered me into the back seat, sliding in beside me. The interior was luxurious, soft leather seats, privacy glass, the faint scent of Adrian's cologne lingering in the air. As we pulled away from my apartment, I felt a curious mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was leaving behind everything familiar, entrusting my safety to a man I barely knew, yet felt inexplicably drawn to, a man who lived in a world of shadows and violence, a man who looked at me as if I were precious beyond measure. Where are we going? I asked as the car merged smoothly into traffic. My primary residence, Adrian replied. It's about 30 minutes outside the city. I glanced out the window, watching familiar streets give way to highways, then to winding roads flanked by increasingly opulent properties. Will your men be there too? Some of them. The house has a security team. He studied my profile. Does that bother you? I considered the question. I don't know. This is all so surreal. Adrian's hand found mine in the darkness, his fingers intertwining with mine. I know this isn't what you would have chosen, Ellie. But I swear to you, I'll make it right. The tenderness in his voice contrasted sharply with the circumstances that had brought us here. I squeezed his hand, drawing comfort from his solid presence. How long will I need to stay? Until I eliminate the threat, he said simply. The casual reference to violence should have disturbed me more than it did. Instead, I found myself nodding, accepting his protection and all it entailed. We turned onto a private road, winding through manicured grounds until a massive house came into view. Calling it a house seemed inadequate. It was a mansion, modern and elegant, with soaring glass walls and warm lighting that spilled onto immaculate gardens. This is where you live? I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. Adrian's lips curved in a faint smile. One of my homes, yes. The car stopped at a grand entrance, where 2 men in dark suits stood waiting. Adrian helped me out, his hand at the small of my back as he guided me inside. The interior was as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, minimalist furnishings in cream and charcoal, artwork that looked museum-worthy adorning the walls. Everything spoke of wealth and taste, power worn with casual confidence. Welcome to my home, Ellie, Adrian said, watching my reaction carefully. I turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. It's beautiful. It's yours while you're here, he replied. You'll have complete freedom within the property. The only restriction is leaving the grounds, a gilded cage then, however spacious. And my job. I can't just disappear. Already arranged. At my questioning look, he elaborated. A family emergency requiring your immediate presence in Arizona. Your supervisor approved a week's leave. I stared at him. You called my supervisor. My assistant did, he clarified. With appropriate documentation, the ease with which he had rearranged my life was both impressive and unsettling. You thought of everything. It's what I do. His hand brushed my arm lightly. Are you hungry? The kitchen can prepare whatever you'd like. The casual offer of service reminded me of the vast difference in our circumstances. In my world, dinner was whatever I could afford, or had time to make myself. In Adrian's, staff awaited his commands at any hour. Just something simple, I said. I'm more tired than hungry. Adrian nodded, pressing a button on a discreet panel in the wall. A woman in a simple black uniform appeared almost instantly. Ms. Winters will be staying with us, Adrian informed her. Please have a light supper sent to the Blue Guest Suite, and ensure her room is prepared. Right away, sir, the woman replied, giving me a polite nod before disappearing. Adrian turned back to me. Let me show you to your room. You can rest, eat, and we'll talk more in the morning. He led me up a sweeping staircase and down a hallway lined with doors. At the end, he opened double doors to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, dressed in plush navy bedding. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked illuminated gardens. A sitting area, complete with a fireplace, occupied one corner. 2 doors presumably led to closets and a bathroom. This is excessive, I said, setting my duffel bag on a bench at the foot of the bed. It looked pathetically small against the luxurious surroundings. Adrian's lips twitched. It's comfortable. It's bigger than where I live, then perhaps where you live is too small. He crossed to a panel similar to the one downstairs and pressed a series of buttons. Soft music filled the room, and the fireplace ignited with a gentle whoosh. The bathroom is through there. You'll find everything you need. If not, press this. He indicated a button on the panel, and someone will bring it to you. I ran my fingers over the silky bedding, trying to reconcile this opulence with the danger that had brought me here. This doesn't feel real. Adrian moved closer, his presence commanding even in the spacious room. It's real, Ellie, as is the threat that brought you here. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I meant what I said. I'll keep you safe. The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. Despite the circumstances, despite the fear and uncertainty, desire curled low in my belly. Adrian sensed the change, his eyes darkening as he watched me. I should let you rest, he said, his voice rougher than before. I caught his wrist as he withdrew his hand. Stay, just for a while. Something flared in his eyes, hunger, triumph, relief. Are you sure? In answer, I stepped closer, eliminating the space between us. I'm here, aren't I? I chose you. Adrian's control shattered. His mouth claimed mine with a possessiveness that stole my breath, his arms encircling me completely. I responded with equal fervor, weeks of tension and attraction culminating in this moment of surrender. We moved toward the bed in perfect synchrony, his hands mapping my body as if committing it to memory. When he laid me down on the silken bedding, his weight a delicious pressure above me, I knew there was no turning back. I had stepped into Adrian's world, his danger, his protection, his possession, and whatever came next, we would face it together. In the soft glow of firelight, as Adrian whispered promises against my skin, I surrendered to the knowledge that I was his, and he, with all his power and darkness and danger, was mine. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains, casting patterns across the unfamiliar ceiling above me. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. The warning, the hasty departure from my apartment, and Adrian. I turned my head to find the space beside me empty, though the indentation in the pillow suggested he hadn't been gone long. The sheets still held his warmth and the faint scent of his cologne. I stretched languidly, my body pleasantly sore in ways that brought a flush to my cheeks, as I remembered how thoroughly Adrian had claimed me. A soft knock at the door roused me from my reverie. I pulled the sheet up to cover myself. Yes? Breakfast, Ms. Winters, a female voice called. May I come in? I glanced down at my state of undress and the scattered clothing that told the story of last night's passion. Just a moment, please. I scrambled from the bed, retrieving Adrian's discarded shirt from the floor and slipping it on. It fell to mid-thigh, decent enough for a brief interaction. I ran fingers through my tangled hair and opened the door. A different woman from the one I'd met last night stood there, holding a tray laden with covered dishes, a carafe of coffee, and a small vase containing a single white rose. Her expression remained professionally neutral as she took in my appearance. "Good morning," she said. "Mr. Volkov asked that breakfast be brought to you. Where would you like it?" Volkov. Adrian's surname. It sounded distinctly Russian, not Georgian as he'd implied. Another small deception, or simply an omission. "By the window is fine," I said, gesturing to a small table and chairs overlooking the gardens. She moved efficiently, setting out the meal with practiced grace. "Mr. Volkov asked me to tell you he had urgent business this morning, but will return by noon. In the meantime, the house and grounds are at your disposal. If you need anything, press the call button." "Thank you," I replied, still processing Adrian's absence. "Is there a phone I could use? I should check in with my friend." The woman hesitated. Mr. Volkov suggested that outside communication be limited for security reasons. However, if it's urgent, I can arrange for a secure line, of course. I was in a gilded cage after all. "It's not urgent. Thank you." She nodded and left, closing the door silently behind her. I approached the breakfast tray, lifting covers to reveal an array of perfect pastries, fresh fruit, and scrambled eggs that smelled divine. A note propped against the coffee carafe caught my eye. I unfolded it to find Adrian's elegant handwriting. "Ellie, business requires my attention this morning. Stay within the house and grounds. The staff will see to your needs. What's mine is yours." Until later, a short, commanding, and possessive, so perfectly Adrian. I smiled despite myself and sat down to enjoy the meal, which was as delicious as it looked. After breakfast, I explored the bathroom, a marble sanctuary with a shower large enough for 4 people and a soaking tub beside floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a private garden. Toiletries in my preferred brands, how had he known, were arranged neatly on the counter. I showered, using the unfamiliar yet luxurious products, and dressed in clothes from my hastily packed bag. They looked woefully out of place in these opulent surroundings, but they were mine. Perhaps the only thing that was truly mine in this place. With nothing else to do, I decided to explore. The hallway outside my suite was quiet, the plush carpet muffling my footsteps as I wandered. The house was even larger than I'd realized, with multiple wings and what seemed like endless rooms. Some doors were closed, while others revealed glimpses of elegant sitting rooms, a library, and what appeared to be a home theater. Staff members appeared occasionally, always polite, always watching. I felt their eyes follow me, not hostile, but vigilant. Were they concerned I might steal something, or was their surveillance part of Adrian's protection? Eventually, I found my way to a sun-filled conservatory at the back of the house. Exotic plants and flowers created a lush oasis, with comfortable seating arranged to enjoy the greenery. I settled into a wicker chair, picking up a book someone had left on a side table, a collection of Russian poetry in translation. As I leafed through the pages, a passage caught my eye. What is this terror? What is this ecstasy? What is it that is coming to me? Out of the darkness, into the light. The wind's wings beat about me. "Akhmatova," a voice said from behind me. One of my mother's favorites. I turned to find Adrian standing in the doorway watching me. He'd changed since last night, now wearing a charcoal suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the leanness of his frame. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a warmth reserved only for me. "You startled me," I said, closing the book. "I thought you weren't coming back until noon. My business concluded early." He moved into the room with his characteristic fluid grace, coming to stand before me. "Did you sleep well?" Heat rose to my cheeks as memories of the previous night flooded back. "Very." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Good." He reached down, taking my hand and pulling me to my feet. "Come, there's something I need to show you." Curiosity piqued, I followed him through the house to a room I hadn't discovered in my explorations, a study with dark wood paneling, leather furniture, and walls lined with books. One wall was dominated by monitors displaying security feeds from various points around the property. Adrian closed the door behind us, the soft click somehow ominous. "Sit, please." I perched on the edge of a leather chair as he moved behind an imposing desk. He pressed a button, and one of the monitors changed to show a news broadcast. The volume rose, and a reporter's voice filled the room. "Found dead in his vehicle early this morning. Police are investigating the shooting as a gangland execution. Sources close to the investigation suggest Vance Morelli was a known associate of the Moretti crime family." The screen showed a crime scene. A car surrounded by police tape, investigators moving around it with grim expressions. Then a photo appeared, the same sandy-haired man from the surveillance images Adrian had shown me. My blood ran cold. "Is that—" "Yes," Adrian interrupted, his voice flat. "The man who was watching you is no longer a concern." The clinical way he delivered this information made my stomach clench. "Did you—" Adrian's expression hardened. "Would it change things between us if I had?" I swallowed hard, confronting the reality of the man I'd given myself to. "I don't know." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "No, Ellie. I didn't kill him personally, but I gave the order. His death is on me as surely as if I'd pulled the trigger." The honesty was both terrifying and oddly comforting. Adrian wasn't trying to shield me from the darkness of his world. He was inviting me to see it, to understand it, to accept it as part of him. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked quietly. "Because you deserve the truth." He came around the desk, kneeling before my chair so our eyes were level. "And because I need you to understand the reality of my life. Of our life together, if that's what you choose." "Our life together," I echoed. "You say that as if I have a choice, but you've already decided, haven't you? You brought me here, rearranged my work schedule, eliminated threats. My life is already entangled with yours." Adrian took my hands in his. "You always have a choice, Ellie. If you want to leave, to go back to your apartment, your job, your normal life, I won't stop you." His grip tightened slightly. "I won't pretend I'll let you go easily, but the choice is yours." I searched his face, looking for deception and finding none. "And if I stay, what then?" "Then you become part of my world completely." His thumbs traced circles on my palms. "Protected, provided for, cherished, but also bound by its rules, its dangers, its secrets, a beautiful prison." Adrian's expression darkened. "Not a prison, a kingdom." He brought one of my hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my palm. "Where you would reign as queen beside me." The offer was intoxicating in its grandeur, its absolute certainty. This powerful, dangerous man was offering me everything: protection, luxury, devotion, asking only for my loyalty in return. It should have been an easy decision. "I need time," I said finally. "This is all happening so fast." Adrian nodded, though I could see the tension in his jaw. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He stood, helping me to my feet. "In the meantime, I have something for you." He moved to a cabinet behind the desk, unlocking it with a key from his pocket. From inside, he withdrew a small velvet box. My heart stuttered. "Adrian." "Not that," he said with a faint smile. "Not yet, at least." He opened the box to reveal a delicate platinum necklace with a single teardrop diamond pendant. The stone caught the light, sending prismatic colors dancing across the wall. "It was my mother's," Adrian said softly. "One of the few things I have left of her. I'd like you to wear it." The sentiment behind the gesture moved me more than the obvious value of the piece. "It's beautiful, but I couldn't—" "Please." He removed the necklace from the box. "Allow me this." I turned, lifting my hair as he fastened the chain around my neck. The pendant rested just above my collarbone, cool against my skin. Adrian's fingers lingered at my nape, sending shivers down my spine. "Perfect," he murmured, turning me to face him again. "It belongs with you." The possessive pride in his eyes made my breath catch. I touched the diamond, feeling its weight. Not just the physical weight of the stone, but the significance of accepting such a gift from him. "Thank you," I said softly. Adrian's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the moment. He checked it with a frown. I need to take this. Make yourself at home. We'll talk more over dinner. He pressed a kiss to my forehead and left, already speaking in rapid Russian into the phone. Alone in his study, surrounded by evidence of his power and influence, I felt the weight of my decision more keenly than ever. The diamond at my throat seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, a tangible reminder of the choice before me. Return to my ordinary life or embrace the extraordinary, dangerous world Adrian offered. I wandered back to the conservatory, seeking solace among the greenery. As I settled into the same chair as before, my fingers unconsciously reached for the pendant. Adrian's mother's necklace, a family heirloom given to me after knowing him for barely a week. The gesture spoke of permanence, of intentions far beyond a casual affair. Hours passed as I sat there, weighing my options. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the marble floor. A staff member appeared to light lamps throughout the room, informing me that dinner would be served in an hour. I returned to my suite to change, finding that in my absence, the closet had been filled with clothes in my size. Dresses, blouses, jeans, even lingerie, all of obvious quality and expense. Another assertion of Adrian's control, his desire to provide, to shape my existence to fit within his world. I chose a simple blue dress that complemented the diamond pendant and made my way to the dining room, where Adrian awaited. He'd changed as well, into dark trousers and a black cashmere sweater that softened his usual severity. He rose as I entered, his eyes appreciative as they took in my appearance. "You found the clothes," he observed, pulling out my chair. "Hard to miss an entire wardrobe appearing in my closet," I replied, settling into the seat. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." He took his place across from me as staff appeared with wine and appetizers. "I want you to have everything you need, everything you desire." "And what about what I want?" I asked quietly. Adrian's expression grew serious. "That's precisely what I'm asking, Ellie. What do you want?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. What did I want? Safety, certainly. Comfort, yes, but also meaning. Purpose. Love. Could I find those things with Adrian, or would his world eventually suffocate what made me who I was? "I want to understand you," I said finally. "Not just what you do, but who you are, where you came from, how you became this." I gestured to encompass him, the house, the wealth and power that surrounded us. Something like surprise flickered across Adrian's face, quickly replaced by thoughtful consideration. He nodded to the staff, who discreetly withdrew, leaving us alone. "My father was a small-time enforcer for the Russian mob in Brooklyn," he began, his voice quiet but clear. "My mother was Georgian, a pianist who came to America seeking a better life and found only hardship. They met when she was waitressing at a restaurant he frequented. He was cruel to everyone but her." He took a sip of wine, his eyes distant with memory. "I was 10 when he was killed, shot in the back of the head by a rival. My mother and I had nothing. We lived in a one-room apartment, barely surviving on what she earned playing piano in hotel lobbies." I listened, rapt, as Adrian shared his past for the first time. "What happened to her?" "Cancer," he said simply. "I was 15. She refused treatment she knew we couldn't afford, choosing instead to pay for my education. By the time she died, I'd already started working for the organization, running errands, delivering messages. They took care of me, in their way." "And you rose through the ranks," I surmised. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Not immediately. I was smart, but impatient. I made mistakes. Nearly got myself killed more than once." His expression hardened. "But I learned. I built alliances. I eliminated threats. Eventually, I took control. And now? Now I control legitimate businesses. Real estate, import, export, entertainment venues. But yes, there are other interests as well. The kind that don't appear on tax forms." He held my gaze steadily. "I won't pretend to be something I'm not, Ellie. Not with you." The honesty in his voice moved me. Whatever else Adrian was, he wasn't hiding his true nature from me. "Thank you for telling me. You asked for the truth. You deserve nothing less." He reached across the table to take my hand. "Now I have a question for you." My heart quickened. "Yes?" Can you accept me as I am? Not some sanitized version, but the reality of who I am and what I do? It was the central question, the one I'd been circling since that first dinner. Could I love a man whose world was built on violence and control, whose power came from fear as much as respect? A man who ordered deaths as casually as he ordered wine? I don't know, I answered honestly. But I want to try. Relief washed over Adrian's features. That's all I ask. He squeezed my hand. Stay with me, Ellie. Give us a chance. Before I could respond, the dining room door opened, and one of Adrian's security men entered urgently. Sir, there's a situation. Adrian's demeanor changed instantly, all softness vanishing behind a mask of cold authority. What is it? The Moretti family. They've taken retaliatory action for Vance. The man glanced at me uncertainly. She stays, Adrian said firmly. Continue. They hit the riverfront property. 2 of our men are down, and they've made contact. They're demanding a meeting. Adrian's expression darkened dangerously. Prepare the car. Full security detail. I want everyone armed and ready in 5 minutes. Yes, sir. The man withdrew swiftly. Adrian turned back to me, his eyes now cold with fury. I need to handle this. Fear clutched at my heart. You're going to meet them? After they attacked your people? It's how this works, Ellie. He stood, already reaching for his phone. Stay here. The house is secure. I'll return as soon as possible. I rose as well, panic rising in my throat. Adrian, don't go. Call the police. A harsh laugh escaped him. The police? This isn't your world, Ellie. There are no authorities to appeal to here. Only power and those willing to use it. He moved to leave, but I caught his arm. Then take me with you. Adrian froze, staring at me as if I'd lost my mind. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. You said I was yours, I countered. That you would protect me. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to understand all of it, not just the luxury and the romance, but this too. No. His voice was iron. I won't risk you. But you'll risk yourself? I challenged. What happens to me if you don't come back? Do I just wait here, trapped in your house, not knowing if you're dead or alive? Conflict raged in his eyes. Ellie. I'm a nurse, Adrian. If someone's hurt, I can help. And if these people are targeting you because of me, I should be there. I touched the diamond at my throat. You gave me this because it meant something to you. Well, you mean something to me too. I'm not letting you face this alone. For a long moment, Adrian said nothing, the muscle in his jaw working as he weighed his options. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. You stay in the car with 2 guards at all times. If anything happens, they get you out immediately. No arguments. Relief washed through me. Agreed. Change into something dark, he instructed. Practical shoes, nothing that stands out. 5 minutes. I hurried back to my suite, heart pounding. What was I doing? Voluntarily walking into a situation with armed criminals, potential violence? Yet the alternative, staying behind, not knowing if Adrian would return, seemed unbearable. In the closet of designer clothes, I found dark jeans, a black sweater, and flat boots. I changed quickly, fastening Adrian's necklace securely beneath my collar. Whatever happened tonight, I wanted this piece of him with me. Adrian was waiting in the foyer, now wearing a black suit with a subtle bulletproof vest underneath, a detail that made my stomach clench with fear. He assessed my outfit with approval, then handed me a slim black phone. Emergency use only, he said. It has 1 number programmed, direct to my security chief. If we're separated for any reason, call immediately. I nodded, slipping the phone into my pocket. Outside, 3 black SUVs idled in the circular drive, engines running. Men with visible weapons stood by each vehicle, their expressions grim. Adrian led me to the middle SUV, opening the door himself rather than delegating. Remember what I said. You stay in the car. I remember, I assured him, sliding into the back seat. He joined me, and immediately 2 guards took positions on either side of our vehicle. The small convoy pulled away from the mansion, heading back toward the city I'd left less than 24 hours ago. As streetlights illuminated Adrian's profile in rhythmic flashes, I studied the man I'd chosen, his severe features set in lines of concentration, his hands steady on his phone as he sent rapid-fire texts. There was no softness in him now, no trace of the lover who had held me through the night. This was Adrian Volkov, the man his enemies feared. Yet when he glanced at me, concern evident in his eyes, I knew both versions were equally real. The question was whether I could accept the whole of him. Darkness and light, tenderness and violence. The convoy turned into an industrial area near the waterfront, a landscape of warehouses and empty lots. We stopped before a nondescript building, its windows dark, a sign advertising River City Storage hanging crookedly from the facade. "Stay here," Adrian commanded, squeezing my hand briefly before exiting the vehicle. His men formed a protective formation around him as they approached the building. I watched through the tinted windows, heart in my throat, as they disappeared inside. Minutes stretched endlessly. The 2 guards left with me maintained vigilant silence, their eyes constantly scanning our surroundings. I clutched the emergency phone in my pocket, praying I wouldn't need to use it. A gunshot shattered the silence, then another and another. My blood turned to ice as rapid gunfire erupted from inside the building. The guards beside me tensed, hands moving to their weapons. "We need to get her out of here," one said to the other. "No," I protested. "Adrian is in there." "Mr. Volkov's orders were clear," the guard replied grimly. "If there's danger, we extract you immediately." As they debated my fate, the warehouse door burst open. Adrian emerged, supporting a bleeding man, one of his security team. Behind them, more of Adrian's men backed out, weapons drawn, covering their retreat. Without thinking, I flung open the car door and ran toward them. "Ellie, no!" Adrian shouted, but I was already at his side. "I'm a nurse," I said, already examining the wounded man's injury, a gunshot to the shoulder. "Get him to the car." Adrian looked furious, but there was no time to argue. Together, we helped the injured guard to the SUV. Once inside, I tore open his shirt to better assess the wound. "Clean through," I announced, pressing a handkerchief someone handed me against the bleeding. "He needs a hospital." "No hospitals," Adrian said tersely, as the convoy peeled away from the warehouse, tires screeching. "We have a private doctor." I applied steady pressure to the wound, using skills honed over years of emergency situations. "What happened in there?" Adrian's expression was thunderous. "A trap. They never intended to negotiate." He checked his phone, sending another text. "The doctor will meet us at the safe house." "Safe house? Not your home?" "Too risky. They could have followed us there." He touched my face briefly. "You shouldn't have left the car, and you shouldn't have gone into an obvious trap," I countered. "Yet here we are." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Touché." The convoy wound through back streets and industrial areas, eventually stopping at what appeared to be an abandoned factory. Inside, however, was a fully equipped living space, sparse but functional, with a medical area already set up. An older man with silver hair and a doctor's bag waited for us. He took one look at the injured guard and gestured to a treatment table. "Bring him here." I helped transfer the wounded man, then stepped back as the doctor began his work. Adrian pulled me aside, his expression grave. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice low and intense. "If anything had happened to you, but it didn't," I interrupted. "I'm fine," and I helped. Adrian shook his head, a mix of frustration and admiration in his eyes. "You're either the bravest or the most foolish woman I've ever known." "Maybe both," I admitted. His hand cupped my cheek, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "This is my world, Ellie. Violence, betrayal, constant vigilance. Are you sure it's what you want?" I covered his hand with mine. "What I want is you. The rest, we'll figure out together." Relief and something deeper, something that looked suspiciously like love, flooded his expression. "Together," he agreed. Over the next hours, the wounded guard was stabilized, security measures were strengthened, and plans were made. I watched Adrian in his element, commanding, strategic, decisive. He consulted me on certain matters, included me in discussions, treating me not as a delicate flower to be protected, but as a partner whose opinion had value. By dawn, the immediate crisis had passed. The Moretti family had retreated to regroup, and Adrian's forces had secured our position. The doctor declared the injured guard stable, and a sense of cautious optimism prevailed. Adrian found me on a small balcony overlooking the river, watching the sun rise over the water. He stood beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. "What happens now?" I asked. "We end this," he replied simply. "The Morettis crossed a line. They need to understand the consequences." I nodded, accepting this reality. "And us? What happens to us?" Adrian turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. "That depends entirely on you, Ellie. I can send you away, somewhere safe, far from all this, where you could return to your normal life, or, I prompted, or you stay with me, not just for now, but for always." His eyes held mine, intense and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen before. "I love you, Ellie. I think I've loved you since I saw you waiting alone in that restaurant. And I know it's too soon, too fast, but nothing in my life has ever felt as right as having you beside me." The declaration stole my breath. It was too soon, too fast, too intense. It defied logic and reason, yet in my heart, I knew it was true, for both of us. "I love you too," I whispered. "God help me. But I do." Adrian's smile was like the breaking dawn, brilliant, transformative. He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if I were precious beyond measure. "Stay with me," he murmured against my hair. "Be my strength, my conscience, my heart. Let me protect you, provide for you, love you as you deserve to be loved." I drew back enough to meet his gaze. "I'll stay on one condition. Name it." "I keep working as a nurse," I said firmly. "Not full-time, perhaps, but I need to maintain that part of myself. I need to help children who need me." Adrian considered this, then nodded slowly. "We'll make it work. Enhanced security, limited schedule. But yes, your work is part of who you are. I wouldn't take that from you." Relief washed through me. "Then yes, I'll stay." He sealed our agreement with a kiss that promised everything: protection, passion, partnership. When we parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to mine. "One more thing," he said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small velvet box, different from the one that had held his mother's necklace. My heart stuttered as he opened it to reveal a diamond ring, the stone catching fire in the morning light. "Too soon?" he asked, a rare uncertainty in his voice. "Yes," I admitted with a smile. "But I don't care." Adrian slipped the ring onto my finger, where it glittered like a promise. "Mine," he said softly. I touched the diamond at my throat, then the new one on my hand. "And you're mine," I replied. "All of you, the good, the bad, the dangerous. I choose all of it." 6 months later, we married in a private ceremony at Adrian's estate. The Moretti threat had been neutralized, through means I chose not to inquire about too closely, and a fragile peace established in the criminal underworld. I continued my nursing work 3 days a week, always under the watchful eyes of Adrian's security team. The rest of my time was divided between charity work, managing our household, and building a life with the man who had claimed me that night at the wrong table. Our world wasn't perfect. Adrian's business still operated in shadows I occasionally glimpsed, and danger was never far away. But within the circle of his protection, I found not a prison, but a sanctuary, a place where I was valued not just for my beauty or my usefulness, but for the strength he saw in me from the beginning. And on nights when memories of violence threatened to overshadow our happiness, Adrian would hold me close and whisper, "You chose all of me, and I chose all of you. Together, we're more than either of us could be alone." In those moments, I knew the truth of it, that fate had led me to the wrong table that night, but somehow to exactly the right man. My mafia husband, my protector, my love. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the one I was meant for, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it, not even the mistake that started it all.